The Anderson family's Thanksgiving dinner was everything you'd expect from a Silicon Valley power family: organic turkey, discussions about series of funding, and thinly veiled criticism of anyone not running a startup. "So Jennifer," Robert Anderson said, swirling his expensive wine, still doing that basic coding work, "what company is it for again?" I dabbed my napkin, fighting to keep my expression neutral. "Still at DataCore Solutions," I replied, "working on enterprise security systems. My name is Jennifer Chin, and at 34, I was supposedly just another mid-level programmer at a boring tech company. At least that's what my in-laws believed." "Enterprise security," my mother-in-law Margaret sighed. "Sounds stable." She made it sound like a terminal illness, not like Michael's new venture. "Have you told her about SecureShare, dear?" My husband Michael straightened in his chair, enthusiasm lighting up his face. "It's amazing, Jen. We've developed this revolutionary encryption algorithm for secure file sharing. The beta testing results are incredible." I took another sip of wine, remembering the late nights I'd spent developing that exact algorithm 3 years ago. The one that had mysteriously disappeared from my personal server shortly after I'd shown it to Michael, excited to share my work with my supportive husband. "Dad's company is investing $5 million in the first round," Michael continued. "We're looking at $1 billion valuation within 2 years, assuming the technology works as promised," Robert added, fixing me with a pointed look. "Not everyone understands the complexities of advanced encryption. It takes a certain level of expertise." I thought about the backdoor I'd built into the algorithm, the one that would activate if anyone tried to use it without proper authentication. The one Michael and his startup team hadn't found because they didn't actually understand how the code worked. "Of course," I said mildly, "encryption is very complex." Margaret reached across the table to pat my hand. "Don't feel bad, dear. Not everyone is cut out for the startup world. Some people are just more comfortable with routine jobs." I glanced at my phone, checking the timer I'd set earlier. In exactly 13 days, SecureShare's encryption system would detect an unauthorized implementation and initiate a systematic shutdown. Unless, of course, someone entered the authentication code hidden in the algorithm's core. The authentication code that only I knew existed. "More wine, Jennifer?" Robert offered magnanimously. "You must be proud of Michael's success. Finally making it big in tech, just like his father." I accepted the wine with a polite smile, remembering the day I'd discovered my code had been stolen. I hadn't confronted Michael immediately. Instead, I'd done what any good programmer would do. I'd started gathering evidence. First, there were the access logs showing Michael's laptop connecting to my home server late at night. Then the file transfer records, carefully masked but not quite well enough. Finally, the code itself, now powering SecureShare's revolutionary platform. What they didn't know was that DataCore Solutions wasn't just another tech company, it was my company, operating under a parent corporation I'd built from the ground up. The basic coding work they dismissed paid me more in a month than their startup had raised in its first round. "Tell Jennifer about the launch party," Margaret urged Michael. "Next week at the Four Seasons. All the major tech journalists will be there." Michael nodded eagerly. "We're unveiling the platform to the public. Dad's already lined up several major clients. They're calling it the future of secure file sharing." I thought about the other piece of code waiting to activate, the one that would display proof of the original authorship to every connected device. That would be quite a show for the tech journalists. "Sounds exciting," I murmured. "Will you be doing a live demonstration?" "Of course," Michael beamed. "We'll show how the encryption works in real time. Dad says it's important to prove the technology actually delivers what we promise." Robert leaned back satisfied. "That's the difference between real innovation and basic coding, Jennifer. Anyone can write simple programs, but creating something truly revolutionary takes vision." I touched the pendant at my neck, a gift from my grandmother, who had taught me my first programming language when I was 10. "Vision is important," I agreed. "So is understanding what you're building." After dinner, as we gathered in the living room for coffee, Robert pulled up SecureShare's website on their massive TV screen. "Look at these metrics," he boasted. 10,000 beta users already. By the time we launch next week, we'll have proven market validation." I watched the user count tick upward, each new connection logging to my private server. Every user who trusted their data to stolen code. every file protected by an algorithm they didn't truly understand. Very impressive, I said, checking my phone again. 12 days, 23 hours until the authentication check. Margaret touched up her lipstick, examining herself in a compact mirror. You know, Jennifer, I'm sure Michael could find you a position at SecureShare. Something entry-level, of course. It would be a step up from your current situation. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Mom, I'm just saying, Margaret continued, family should help family, even if some members need a little more guidance than others. I thought about the real metrics on my private dashboard, the vulnerability logs, the backdoor access points, the time bomb waiting in their revolutionary code. That's very kind, I replied, but I'm happy where I am. Later that night, as Michael and I drove home, he tried to apologize. You know how they are? They just want everyone to be successful. Like you? I asked quietly. He missed the edge in my voice. Exactly. This startup is going to change everything. Once we launch next week, you'll see what real success looks like. I stared out the window at the passing Silicon Valley mansions. Success can look different to different people. At home, while Michael slept, I sat in my home office reviewing SecureShare's code structure. They had made some modifications to my algorithm, but the core remained unchanged. They hadn't even bothered to remove my original comments, just changed the attribution. My phone buzzed. A message from my CTO at DataCore. Board meeting tomorrow. Acquisition target identified. Time to proceed. I looked at the family photo on my desk. Michael and me on our wedding day, his parents beaming in the background. 5 years of marriage, and they had never bothered to ask what I actually did at work. Never shown any interest in my basic coding. Yes, I typed back. Time to proceed. Because in 12 days, the tech world would learn an important lesson about underestimating basic programmers. And the Andersons would discover that true innovation isn't about stealing ideas, it's about understanding them. I closed my laptop, thinking about the launch party next week, about the live demonstration that would reveal more than they intended, about the journalists who would witness a different kind of tech revolution than they expected. Sometimes the best code isn't the most complex. Sometimes it's the kind that waits quietly in the background, doing exactly what its creator intended. And sometimes the most satisfying success is the kind that proves exactly who wrote the original algorithm. The week before SecureShare's launch party passed in a blur of preparation. While Michael and his team rehearsed their presentation, I quietly put the final pieces of my plan into place. The Four Seasons ballroom is booked solid, my assistant reported. Every major tech journalist and venture capitalist in Silicon Valley will be there. Perfect. The bigger the audience, the better. I sat in my real office, not the modest cubicle at DataCore Solutions where I occasionally appeared to maintain my cover, but the top-floor executive suite of Chen Technologies, the parent company I'd built into a cybersecurity powerhouse. The acquisition papers are ready, my legal team confirmed. We can move as soon as you give the word. On my screens, I monitored SecureShare's systems. Their user base had grown to 50,000 beta testers, all trusting their sensitive data to stolen code. Michael and his team had made superficial changes to the interface, but the core algorithm, my algorithm, remained unchanged, including the authentication trigger set to activate during their live demonstration. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Big news. Google's VP of Security is attending the launch. This could be huge. I smiled, thinking about the email I'd received that morning from Google's actual VP of Security, confirming they'd be interested in acquiring my company's new security protocol. The same protocol that would prove SecureShare's technology was stolen. The night before the launch, Margaret hosted a family celebration dinner at their mansion. To SecureShare, Robert toasted, raising his crystal glass. And to my son, following in his father's footsteps to become a true tech innovator. I watched Michael beam at his father's praise, remembering how different he'd been when we first met in college. Back then, he'd been passionate about coding, about creating something meaningful. When had that changed into this desperate need for his father's approval? Jennifer, Margaret turned to me with false sweetness. I know tomorrow might be difficult for you, seeing such success while you're still doing basic work. But remember, family supports family. I touched my grandmother's pendant, thinking about real family, about the woman who had taught me that true innovation comes from understanding, not stealing. Yes, I agreed quietly. Family should support family. The next morning dawned clear and bright. The Four Seasons ballroom slowly filled with Silicon Valley's elite, venture capitalists in designer suits, tech journalists with expensive cameras, startup founders hoping to network. I sat in the back, watching Robert work the room. Revolutionary encryption technology, he boasted to anyone who would listen. Completely proprietary algorithm, my son's team developed it from scratch. Michael paced near the stage, reviewing his presentation notes. The huge screens behind him displayed SecureShare's logo and impressive beta testing statistics. At exactly 10 a.m., Robert took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future of secure file sharing. The crowd applauded politely as Michael joined his father. What we're about to show you will change how businesses handle sensitive data forever, he promised. I checked my phone. The authentication trigger would activate in exactly 3 minutes. Let me demonstrate our revolutionary encryption system, Michael said, pulling up the platform on the main screen. We'll perform a live file transfer using our proprietary algorithm. The audience leaned forward as Michael began the demonstration. On screen, the encryption process started normally, the interface showing the complex security protocols at work. Then, exactly as coded, the authentication check began. Michael's voice faltered as unexpected text appeared on screen. Authentication required. Original author verification protocol initiated. This is just a security feature, he stammered, but the system continued its programmed sequence. New text appeared. Original algorithm author, Jennifer Chen. Date created. 3 years ago. Accessing original development logs. The huge screens filled with evidence, server logs showing the original code creation, timestamps proving my authorship, records of the unauthorized access from Michael's laptop. The room erupted in murmurs. Journalists started taking photos. Venture capitalists whispered urgently into phones. This is some kind of hack, Robert declared, rushing to the stage. But his words died as the final screen appeared. My official company profile as CEO of Chen Technologies, parent company of DataCore Solutions and holder of multiple cybersecurity patents, including the patent for the encryption algorithm powering SecureShare. I stood up slowly, every eye in the room turning to me. Actually, Robert, it's not a hack. It's a security feature I built into my algorithm. The same algorithm your son stole from my home server 3 years ago. The silence was deafening. Michael's face had gone pale. Jen, I can explain. Let me explain, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned ballroom. 3 years ago, I developed this encryption system. I was excited to share my work with my husband, hoping he'd be proud of what I created. Instead, he stole it, gave it to his father's company, and claimed it as his own. Robert stepped forward, his face red. These are serious accusations. They're not accusations, I interrupted. They're facts. Facts I can prove with server logs, access records, and my original source code. Facts that are currently being sent to every device connected to SecureShare's network. Journalists were typing frantically. The crowd parted as I walked to the stage. What do you want? Robert demanded, his voice low. I smiled. What I've always wanted, recognition for my work, and maybe a lesson about underestimating basic programmers. The next hour was chaos. SecureShare's investors huddled with lawyers. Journalists cornered anyone who would talk. And in the middle of it all, Michael finally faced the truth. Why did you tell me? He asked, his voice breaking. About your company, about who you really are. Would you have listened? I replied, or would you have just seen what your parents taught you to see? A wife doing basic coding work. 1 week later, the tech world was still buzzing with the story. SecureShare scandal. Stolen algorithm reveals hidden tech empire, read the headlines. Chen Technologies stock soared as the truth about our security innovations became public. Robert and Margaret stopped hosting family dinners. Their friends in Silicon Valley suddenly became very busy when they called. Success, it turned out, looked different when it wasn't built on stolen ideas. Michael and I had long conversations about trust, ambition, and what it means to create something real. He finally admitted how lost he'd felt trying to live up to his father's expectations, how stealing my work had seemed like an easy way to gain approval. I forgot who I really wanted to be, he said quietly. Somewhere along the way, I started believing their definition of success. I thought about my grandmother, who had taught me that true innovation comes from understanding, not appearances. It's not too late to remember, I told him. Today, Chen Technologies continues to grow, now publicly recognized as a leader in cybersecurity innovation. I still wear my grandmother's pendant, a reminder that real success isn't about impressing others, it's about being true to your own vision. Michael returned to actual coding, working for a small startup where he's learning to build something genuine. It's not the kind of success his parents wanted for him, but it's real. Last week, a young programmer asked me why I'd waited 3 years to expose the theft. You could have stopped them immediately, she said. Why let them build an entire company on stolen code? I showed her the authentication trigger in the algorithm. The elegant code that had waited quietly, doing exactly what it was designed to do. Sometimes, I explained, the best way to teach a lesson isn't to stop someone from making a mistake. It's to let them build their entire plan around that mistake, so when the truth comes out, they can't ignore what they've done. Robert and Margaret still live in their Silicon Valley mansion, but they've stopped talking about real innovation and basic coding. Perhaps they've learned that true technology isn't about who can claim credit, it's about who can actually create. As for me, I keep a framed copy of SecureShare's launch invitation in my office. Not as a reminder of revenge, but as a lesson about assumptions and understanding, about the difference between claiming success and earning it. Because sometimes the most elegant code isn't the most complicated. Sometimes it's the kind that waits patiently, revealing the truth at exactly the right moment. And sometimes the best success isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving to yourself that you were right all along.